He was victorious in late August against Joe Lozon. What a great fight that was. A nice rematch on Fox. And he's one of those guys who was saying from the get-go that Mickey Gall was going to essentially run through CM Punk. He has known Mickey for quite some time. Longtime veteran of the sport, Jim Miller, joins us right now on the phone. Jim, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for the time. So like I said, there's a lot to talk to you about, but you were one of those guys at the beginning who said that, this was going to be a pretty easy night for Mickey. Was that how you expected it to go?
Yeah. And nothing against, Phil. But Mickey's been training for years, and he's one of those guys that, as a fighter, you knew that next generation was coming up, and he's one of those guys that's part of that next generation. Even though he's only had, 3 pro fights now, at 24, he's been around the sport for a long time.
When did you first meet him?
I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but it was, it was back in the AMA days. It was, it had to be at least 5 years ago.
Okay, wow.
Probably a little bit more. I think he was young when he first showed up at the pro practice. So even probably like 6 or 7 years ago.
We've been talking all week, and ever since this was booked, that this kid seems to have it. He just gets it. He calls people out. He's great on the mic. He's got that good look. He seems to be a great prospect. He knows what he's doing in the cage. Do you recall when you started to feel that way about him? Did you ever think to yourself like, ooh, this is someone who can actually have a run in this sport? He has that potential. He gets it. He has the package, so to speak. From the technical standpoint and from athleticism, it was pretty much right away. Coming in to a room that at the time had 5 or 6 guys fighting in the UFC and being dangerous and being a pain in the ass for every one of us. You knew that he had the potential if he could stick around. That's probably the biggest hurdle to get over, is that resiliency of being in the sport long enough and training long enough. And he definitely had that. The dealing with the pressure and dealing with the media, I didn't know that about him. I didn't know how he was going to take it. And then when he got the opportunity, he's handled it very well. As one of the leaders of your team, and such a longtime vet and so successful in your MMA career, do you sense any animosity towards him, that he's getting all this attention and he got this opportunity, and that he's clearly going to get pushed now by the UFC? Like within the team, do you feel like anyone kind of looks at him and says like, man, I've been doing this a lot longer than you? You don't strike me as that kind of guy, and I'm not implying you, but other people who are trying to work their way up, fighting for the CFFCs and 10, do you sense that at all? Does he have to deal with that?
No, he doesn't. The guys that, I've been around and he's been around, that we've been training together mutually for years now, they all get it. They all know. This was somebody that, me personally, I would have been more active as a fighter coming up. He had a couple fights fall through and stuff like that, but it's that Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, like, hey man, he calls out CM Punk because Dan is there at his pro debut and gets the opportunity, and it's like, man, here's a kid that's coming in and. I think he was making 10-10 for his first fight, which was double what I was making for my first UFC fight. So it's like, wow, that kind of sucks, but times have changed, and it's just an opportunity. And I'm happy to see someone as grounded and as good a person as Mickey to get it. It could go to a guy like him, or it could go to somebody that hasn't put the work in, hasn't been around the sport that long. So, I think everybody, even the guys that are in the trenches that are right there on the cusp and, have nearly 20 fights and are ready to be in the UFC and ready to compete at the highest levels of the UFC, they understand that it's just some guys get the opportunity and when they're young, and that's just the way that it is.
everybody is supporting Mickey and is hoping that he seizes this opportunity.
I'm assuming you watched it, right?
Yes, I did.
Putting aside your relationship, your feelings on Mickey, as someone who has literally bled inside the octagon, you've been through the ups, the downs. You've knocked on that title shot door. I mean, you have essentially done it all in this sport. What were your feelings seeing CM Punk make the walk, seeing him in there? Like, were you disgusted by it? Were you bothered by it? Did you think it was a black eye on the sport? And then how did you feel after hearing him on the mic and everything? Did it change at all?
I didn't feel insulted by it or anything like that. He's on the other end of that opportunity. Here's a guy that he has a name for himself. He's the main event at WrestleMania or whatever. So he's got a name, he's got a following. On the part of like, hey, stepping up and doing it. There are people that would do it. There are people that wouldn't do it, and he's one of the ones that actually made the walk and didn't throw up on his way to the gate. So I tip my hat to him. There are people that would do it. There are quite a few people that would, given the opportunity, would step in there. But yeah, he handled himself very well. It's unforgiving, and there's nothing like getting your ass kicked in front of a couple million people.
Yeah.
To make the hardest man crumble a little bit, and he handled it very well. So it's one of those things. You see a little bit of flack going his way, and he's not the one who wrote up the contract. That's
right.
So,
that's a great point.
I mean, he talked to Dana White. Dana said, "Yeah, let's do it," and he did his part. So there's really, I knew the way that it was going to go. It's like I said, it's unforgiving. It's a legitimate sport. The times have changed. It's not guys that fight in bar rooms coming into the UFC and making a name for themselves. It takes work, and like I said, Mickey's put in that work.
Literally minutes ago, the news came out that his disclosed pay was $500,000. Do you have a problem with that?
I'm jealous. I'd like to be making that kind of money.
Sure. Have you ever made $500 in disclosed pay?
No. I've been scratching and clawing my way to where I am right now, and it's frustrating that I could have 24 fights in the UFC and be in multiple fight of the nights and stuff like that, and headline a few cards, and not being making that kind of money, not being able to provide as comfortable a life for my family as I'd like to if I was making that money. So it is frustrating, yeah, but it's just one of those things. I gotta earn my way up there, and do it. So, trying.
One last thing on this whole experiment. Mickey called out Sage Northcutt, and since you were so accurate with your prediction the first time around, do you like that fight for him, and do you think that it bodes well for him?
Yeah, I do. Mickey's he's a talented striker. We haven't gotten to see much of it inside the octagon, but he's creative and I think he can handle himself on the feet with Sage, and he's a legitimate brown belt on the ground, and I've seen him give quite a few black belts trouble, and he gives me trouble, man. He's a pain in the ass. His body type and his aggression on the ground it makes it difficult. I have to be on my game, to get the better of him.
Wow.
So, yeah, I think he goes to the ground with Sage, and it's another dominant submission in the first round. Obviously Sage is very dangerous on his feet. He's very unorthodox and can throw some crazy things, but I think it's a perfect matchup for Mickey, and it's like,
you know, yeah, do it, take the fight, and you know, and continue the momentum.
Right. Okay. So now talking about you, because your story is so fascinating to me. You've now won 2 in a row, and it seemed like, you know, after the Chiesa fight in December and then the Diego Sanchez fight, people were starting to kind of, you know, write the obituary of your career, but you have turned it around in a very big way. And then you come out with the revelation that you were suffering from Lyme disease, and that was really affecting you. Where are we at now with that? Is that something that you can just shed, or do you have that, you know, for the rest of your life? And how did you contract Lyme disease?
You know, I live in, like, it's not suburban, it's more like sub-rural New Jersey. You know, I mean, we're rural, but we're not like super rural. You know, my backyard butts up against cow pasture, and, you know, there's deer everywhere, and I've got dogs. I spend time outside. So I deal with ticks every year. You know, I haven't had too many bite me, but it's just one of those things that now they're finding that the tick only has to be attached for like 15 minutes, and if you get the bullseye, you've basically won the lottery. But yeah, you know, it's one of those things where they don't know much about Lyme, and it has a lot of co-infections, and it can just show with so many different things. And that was kind of the issue with it, is I just felt like I had been training for a long time. You know, my knees started to hurt. I was getting, you know, I never suffered from low back pain. All of a sudden I was dealing with low back pain, and then numbness and tingling, which I've had some neck injuries in the past, and dealt with those things. And it was just, it just slowly slid downhill and got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, I trained for the Chiesa fight and was training and had a normal training camp, you know, getting in, a decent amount of training sessions. And I was coaching wrestling for my kids and stuff. So I was doing a lot. And, you know, I felt like I wore myself down to a nub, and never really kind of pulled out of it after the fight, and then went into the camp for Diego and just never got going. You know, it was, I was having a lot of arthritic symptoms, basically. You know, I'd wake up in the morning, some mornings, and pretty much not be able to move for, you know, 15 minutes. Just have to kind of lay there and slowly stretch it out and kind of deal with it. You know, and every time I go up and down a set of stairs, I'd be grabbing onto that handrail or going up and down sideways, because it didn't hurt my knees as bad. You know, and I thought it was just kind of the wear and tear. But we did some blood tests before the fight, and it came back to that Lyme. So you know, I went on doxycycline right after that fight. I've been on it since, you know, the second week in March. And it's one of those things where, you know, now you're dealing with being on antibiotic for a while. So that kind of sucks. But
is that for life?
No. Some people have Lyme and they go on antibiotics for a while, and what ends up happening is the antibiotics technically don't even kill the Lyme disease, the bacteria. They just slow it down so that your body can beat it. So you kind of have to just let your body beat it. But there are quite a few people that they have continual bouts, and they'll have it, you know, every couple of years. And other people get it, and it never comes back again. And but yeah, it's an epidemic, and it really doesn't get the publicity that it should, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because I have it. But, you know, it's just one of those things. At least now I know what it feels like when I get it. Because even while on the antibiotics, you still kind of have these little dips where you feel like crap. And it'll last for a day or two, and just, you know, feeling really run down, joints hurting and stuff like that. And I know what it is now. So I'm a lot more comfortable with it. I'm a lot more comfortable with the idea of, okay, well, even if it doesn't
completely go away and I have to deal with it in another couple of years, at least I know the feeling now.
Right.
Where it was a miserable, like an absolutely miserable, like 8-9 months. I mean, it started probably in the summer of last year where it started to like just, that's when I started to really get the symptoms and it was like, it was rough, but everybody's got to deal with something,
Sure.
And if this is all I have to deal with, then so be it, and I'll take it and be thankful that it's only this, because there are other fighters and there are other people that deal with way worse, than feeling the symptoms of Lyme disease and fighting with it. So we'll see how it goes, and we'll keep monitoring it, and
So when you're
hopefully I don't have to deal with it.
Well, when you're fighting now, do you feel like your old self, or not quite back 100% yet?
I do feel like my old self.
Okay.
One of the things that it seemed to affect me was, for some reason, it was just my explosiveness just wasn't there. I didn't feel as explosive as I had, and that might have been from even when I was training more consistently, but towards the Mark fight, I wasn't training as consistently. So, but yeah, I just didn't feel like I had as much pop, and because I was kind of also, even if I was warmed up and had been training for an hour, if I stood up, my knees would hurt, and I'd stand up like an old man. I'd post on my knees and I'd grunt and I'd groan, and it didn't matter how warm I was. It still hurt. So I think I was kind of, compensating for it and not getting into those deep scrambles and stuff like that where I was putting myself in spots where, even if you're healthy and feeling good, you might bang yourself up. But, it's just the way that it is. So, but I feel way better. I'd never seen anything on it, but I think it was affecting my metabolism as well. I had a really tough time with weight cuts from, starting last April. I probably contracted it in late 2014. So last April, I had an awful weight cut, and then just the next 3 after that, even though I was trying to really take my weight down and make it easier on me, I was still having tough weight cuts. And then since I've been on the medication and feeling better, the last 2 weight cuts have been the easiest in my UFC career.
Wow.
This last one that I had for the August fight was probably the easiest weight cut I've ever had, because it was just everything was dialed in. I showed up to fight week like 7 pounds over, then did all the right things leading up to it, where even when I was young and I was only 7 pounds over, I was just beating my ass and sweating it off and running it off and stuff like that. Now it's just knowing all the right things to do to manipulate it. It just melted off and was a piece of cake.
Any idea after the 2 wins now in the back end of 2016, UFC 200 over Takanori Gomi, the win over Joe Lozon, which was a fantastic fight in late August. Any idea who's next? And if not, will you, dare I say, pull a Mickey Gall and call out your next opponent?
No, you know what? It's never been my style. I just want to fight, and I definitely want to get one in by the end of the year. That was one of those fights where with Joe, that I was a little more banged up coming out of it. My shin's still pretty swollen, so I'm not quite ready to hop right back into a training camp, but. I definitely want to get another one in by the end of the year, and I don't really care who, I don't really care where, and I don't really care when. So,
all right.
When Joe Silva emails me, he basically tells me who I'm fighting. It's not really a question. It's not anything like that. It's like, hey, you're fighting this guy on that date. Yes, sir. And that's the way it goes. So, I'll let him know when I'm ready.
All right. Well, soon that is going to change because Joe is leaving, but I get your point.
Yeah.
Happy to hear that everything's doing much better and that you're feeling better, and congrats on the recent success. Appreciate your time, Jim. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right. There he is, Jim Miller, stopping by.